Hey, howdy, hey folks, it is Mrs. Johnson with the Agri Wisdom channel. A couple weeks ago, I made a video about how I read and how I annotate things, specifically with highlighters and markers and things. And I told you that I would give you an example. And I have read the first 2.5 pages of this article that I read in college for one of my agricultural education classes at Chico State. And it was a very interesting, food for thought piece. I feel like they do a good job of, even though it revolves around things like race, I feel like they do a good job to be like, hey, we used this scientific method to study, racism or whiteness, or the privilege of whiteness, or however you would like to phrase that, to kind of talk about some of the things and patterns that we see in FFA. And I really appreciated it when I was in college, because I was not an FFA kid, and everything that I knew about FFA was pretty rural, middle of nowhere kind of stuff, which can be a little scary, especially for kids that maybe don't look like the majority of kids from the middle of nowhere, rural, agriculture land type folks. And I feel like this does a decent job of maybe trying to analyze some of those patterns and explain them. And anyway, I got totally derailed there about, I guess I was talking about the main gist of the paper. If you want to read the paper, rest of the paper, read the paper. I'm not going to read the paper to you. I feel like if you can do that on your own as an adult, as a responsible person on the internet, if you're interested, you can read the article. But let's talk about what I highlighted. Every time I highlight given, I always read it. In this case, I read it like a year ago, so I reread it, and then went through and highlighted it. And oftentimes, if I'm reading something or highlighting something that I've read before, I'll read a paragraph and then highlight, and then read the next paragraph and then highlight, or read one section and then highlight, and then read another section and then highlight, just because it makes it easier on me. And I highlighted, in this case, specifically for the gist of paragraphs. I just wanted to pull out the gist of things, a pretty detailed gist. If I was, I wanted to be able to talk about it paragraph by paragraph if I needed to. Kind of like I would in class, maybe. Talk about it paragraph by paragraph or section by section, rather than summarizing the whole article. If I was summarizing the whole article, I would probably highlight 1/10 of what I've done right now. Just because this is a super, super, super long thing. Yeah. It's 13 pages long. From beginning to end, excluding sources. So I read, what is that? A sixth-ish, a little over a sixth. And you'll see that, I should preface, research articles are really heavy in information. This bulk of highlighting is going to look a lot different when you're reading a book, or something that is designed to be read at a lower reading level. Just because there's less information in it, but research articles are very heavy in information. And so as I summarize articles, or as I summarize paragraphs, you'll see a lot of highlighting, right? FFA for all. This study utilizes a framework of critical whiteness to explore activities codified, whiteness, whiteness emerged through the concept of, and then you jump into the introduction, right? Green, at least for me, is like main points. Blue is a vocab word that I should know. The yellow is the vocab definitions, because, as I mentioned in the last one, I wanted to not be like other girls. And I picked all my own colors, and they were fun and wacky when I first did it, because I wanted them to be fun and engaging for me and not like everyone else. And so I just made up a thing that brought me joy and I enjoyed. And that's the color code that I still use, because I enjoy that color code, because I put some thought into what I wanted. And you'll see that kind of as we go, there are things that I kind of leave out. There's some things that I definitely, put in and I want a lot of information on, just because I feel like if I'm going to summarize this, right, I want a little more information to go from this is the important parts of this paragraph into my summary. And that's usually how I do it when I'm summarizing things, is I break it down into smaller and smaller pieces. And so, this whole paragraph is really big, and then I made it like half as big. And then when I were to like write out a summary of this paragraph, it'd be like half as big as my highlighted stuff. And you'll see down here, oh hey, like this paragraph doesn't have a whole lot highlighted, because if you look, they're addressing a potential criticism. Essentially, that criticism is students of color finding success in FFA and being in an FFA. This is not about them. The argument basically is not about them existing in FFA. It's about what might make it harder for them to exist in FFA. Not that they don't exist. Those two things are a little different. But as you just saw, I can paraphrase that in one or two sentences. And so I've got 1 or 2 sentences worth of highlighting done. And then that paragraph's done. Compared to like the next one, school-based agricultural education, critical methodology explores the dominant representations and voices, how systems of power, oppression, privilege are maintained. Topics of race, such as race, has been the focus of research before, but they did not focus on the power, oppression, blah, blah, blah. These studies have focused on power and privilege in a broader context. This paragraph, just because I know a little bit about research articles, this paragraph is important because it elaborates on what has been researched before, what is already out there, what research you're building upon, and how you're building upon it. So, right, basically what they're saying is, yes, things like racism and race and power issues and social issues in FFA, or in specifically school-based agricultural education, has been studied. But it has not been studied for the critical issues of power, oppression, privilege, and homogeny, which is what they're doing. And so, I hope that as you're hearing me talk, you can kind of hearing me talk through some of these highlighted things. I specifically highlighted with the intention of being able to summarize these paragraphs quite quickly. And so you can kind of hear me break it down into more and more summarization as I talk you through what I highlighted and then what my highlighted things mean. And now I will tell you, this 2.5 pages took me like at least 30 minutes to like reread, like 30 minutes, I would say 30 minutes to an hour and a half. I wasn't really timing it, but to like reread this from a year ago and like really briefly like look at it, look at the whole thing and get a big picture of the whole thing and kind of think about what I wanted to summarize, and then go back and reread it reread paragraph by paragraph, and then highlight paragraph by paragraph. So I would reread, highlight, reread, highlight, reread, highlight, reread a paragraph, highlight it, reread a paragraph, highlight it, after rereading the whole article again. It took me a while, and it takes a while. And I mention that because this is a skill that I don't do very often anymore. I don't have a lot of things that I'm summarizing very much. I do have things that or at least in college, I had a lot of things that I was answering questions on, or pulling data out of. So I did a lot of like reading research papers and then using that as a reference for my own research. And I didn't do a whole lot of deep reading into those. I did a lot of like, let me read bits and pieces and, okay, cool, this demonstrates this fact, that I'm basing my research off of. I'm going to use it. And so this summarization, highlighting, took me a while because I haven't done it in a long time. But I say that to demonstrate that highlighting is a skill. It's a useful skill, as you saw. Now that it's highlighted and I've kind of gotten myself pretty adjusted with the material, I can summarize it pretty quick. I can go from what I've highlighted into full, complete sentences about what is happening. And that takes some practice. Reading it, being able to highlight in a way that makes sense to you, and then go turn immediately around and answer your question based on what you've highlighted, just takes practice. And my biggest recommendation is to read something and then come back and highlight it, and then use that highlighted material immediately. So if you're doing something like this, highlight it and then summarize it. Highlight it and then summarize it. And then it gets easier the more that you do. Or highlight something and answer the reading question that you have. Highlight something, write your little research article thing that references this stuff that you've highlighted. Without further ado, I hope that was helpful. I hope. And I hope you maybe read this article, because it was a good food for thought. Maybe not perfect. Maybe not the end all be all, because we are a community of people and we're always going to have issues and struggles. But it was nice to consider and put on my thinking glasses, or my reading glasses, and consider and kind of sit with for a minute and consider some of the things that make my community the way it is, even if I didn't necessarily agree with it. Or understand it, or experience it firsthand. It was interesting to think about and talk about. And maybe built some of my empathy for people and some of the things that they might have faced in my community. So, yeah. Without further ado, bye. I hope you learned something. And I will see you soon. Have a great day. Bye.